Hey guys, Thomas Cecilia Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie The Possession of Hannah Grace. So, we begin this movie with Hannah already being tied up in the very possession-based fashion, and a priest doing a exorcist. However, Hannah wakes up and headbutts the priest, and her dad proceeds to try to fight her off. However, she persists to kill the main priest and then starts to choke out another one. We see that the father of this young woman begins to suffocate her, and then 3 months pass. So, already this premise of this possession movie is a little bit different from most of the possession movies I've seen, which in case it hasn't been made obvious that I've reviewed quite a few possession movies, the premise usually is we see the adventure of what young woman gets possessed, and then it leads up to the priest doing the exorcist, and that's usually the end. So, being the possession and seeing it fail be the beginning was a slightly interesting take on the whole exorcist bit. Nonetheless, it cuts to this boxing lady named Hannah. And she was also a police officer. And I guess she does boxing on the side. So she goes to work for the morgue. So she's getting rolled around, getting shown what to do, when to do it, etc., etc. And she meets another cop named Dave, who does a little bit of a jump scare on her. So this movie does have obvious jump scares. Nothing new about that. And she sees this person, then starts to get these visions of when she used to be a cop and how she froze and wasn't able to do anything as her partner was shot. So we get to see that, and we get to hear her talk about that in one of those group talks, one of those sharing groups. So her ex-boyfriend, who is also a cop, who's named Andrew, talks to her. They always have, whenever they are talking about the situation being bad and so on and so forth. So, nonetheless, Megan starts to chill and then gets a ring to go outside, and she sees no outside temporarily until a hooded figure appears near the doorway and wants in. So, she calls in the police to essentially get rid of that. But nonetheless, later on, she gets called by this other guy. I wrote his name later on. I believe his name was Randy. There we go. So, Randy, who is a person who works at the hospital, I assume he only drops off the bodies. I assume that's his only job. I don't know. But that's based off of what I've seen in the movie. So he wants to get her help, and so he manages to do that. However, that allows the hooded figure to get inside. So Megan gets back in. She works over the body of Hannah. It fails to get her pictures, and she gets hurt a bit in the process of trying to get a closer picture. So she falls over a bit, stumbles and falls, and gets some of her blood on Hannah. And as she's trying to close the hatch, it reopens itself and is trying to self-log in, but for whatever reason, she doesn't have access, so she uses someone else's account to get in. And she looks up Hannah to see that her eyes did not match the description that was on the notes of the morgue. So she's curious about that. So she opens this like cloth thing that's like covering her body, and a swarm of bees or bugs or something, or rather, go to attack her, and she leaves, and she looks back, and there's of course nothing really actually there. And she doesn't really think nothing much of it. She assumes that this was some sort of figment of her imagination, so she recovers pretty quickly from that. Meanwhile, she starts to hear noises from elsewhere and starts to call out for Dave, the policeman I mentioned earlier. And this body starts to get removed and drags off, and we see that it is the hooded figure once again, trying to drag the body into this furnace. So Megan follows suit and starts to attack this hooded figure, and the hooded figure and her fight each other. So she calls for police, and as they continue fighting, she eventually gets the assist from her fellow cops, and this guy is screaming about how they need to essentially destroy the body, and Hannah isn't truly dead and stuff of that nature, and thus, Megan proceeds to try to once again move the body. It starts to twitch. As she closes it, the hatch opens again, and she starts to pull the corpse back out. From there, she gets a call from her ex, Andrew, and we see that the body of Hannah is starting to twitch, but she didn't see that exact one. However, she does see the mouth open from the corpse, and she starts to freak out. So, Lisa, another co-worker, gets in there, and she starts to talk about Megan, and I assume that Lisa's also one of the members from that group talk as well. And Megan persists that she needs to do this, specific job. I know that feeling all too well. Nonetheless, Megan mentions how the corpse was breathing, and Lisa's trying to wave that off, like, yeah, corpses' mouths drop sometimes, there's something or other around that nature. So the two of them are just chilling about, and Dave calls them up. And the hatch, of course, once again opens. So Megan proceeds to talk with Andrew, her ex, some more, and then they're still mad at each other. But she manages to send over some prints of the data to get more information. So we cut to Dave, who is now messing around, and a shadow slinks along the corridor. We see that it is quickly Hannah's body, and Dave starts to become more and more anxious as he's moving around. He picks up this ball and then proceeds to hear a noise. Meanwhile, Hannah is trying to continue to proceed to do the whole print thing of the data, and Dave opens the hatch to the corpse and is pushed back all the way up to the roof, all the way back to the door to the hatch, and is pushed or grabbed inside, and the door closes, or hatch, I should say. So now, Megan is looking for Dave and sees a little bit of a mess, and she continues to look around. Lisa's magically now just gone from the movie for a brief moment of time. So, we see her move about, and she calls out and does the whole hello when there's no one around. This is referring to Megan, by the way. So she sees this ball roll as she's using the restroom, and she's looking around, and the X is like referring that the computer must have been through a glitch or something along those lines. Uh, Megan starts to look up this whole Hannah's situation and the whole demonic possession. So she looks at the body and sees this hand and tries to cover it back up and slides it back in, getting a little bit of a weird vibe of something changing on the body. So this other cop, I never caught his name. I'm just gonna call him the Black Cop because that's the only thing I can refer to him as, unfortunately, because I never caught his name. Is calling out to Dave, and he just like starts to move about, but Dave's already dead, of course. And Megan checks in with the camera footage, and she starts to go frame by frame of what happens and sees the body appear. So she talks to Lisa about it. And Lisa sees the pills and assumes that she was on the pills, and Megan says, like, oh, I didn't take them. And Lisa, in a weird moment, says she trusts her but doesn't believe the whole corpse thing. Okay. So, anyways, Lisa lights up a smoke or a cigarette and sees some figures and assumes it's Dave and starts to head upstairs. She makes her way to the roof and is met up by the corpse, Hannah, and gets lifted and twisted and turned around and killed. So that happens. And we cut back to Randy, our good old-fashioned cop buddy. Hospital assistant, not a cop, and who wants to assist with another body. Hannah refuses, but goes to him anyway, and he starts to ask her about why she decided to work at a morgue, and Randy starts to share about himself and how he met someone and how and by meeting someone he was able to pick his life up, and how she should do the same for herself. So she calls her ex, and I forgot his name. God damn it. Anyway, about being anxious and then telling him the truth. I kept writing X in my notes later on, so I apologize for that. Anyway, so Hannah, the corpse Hannah, begins to move into the elevator and moves along, and Hannah starts to move along in another direction. And Randy, our hospital guy, gives a call to say, the situation's all covered, and gets a bump on the road. He starts to proceed to check out what happened and gets a call of static, and sees Hannah's body start to move closer, so he starts to freak out and try to run. Meanwhile, Lisa, in a back and forth cut system, starts to check out the security system while Randy's dealing with his situation. It cuts back and forth constantly. We see her see the body moving, and then he's seeing the body movie actually happening in front of him, and the truck gets crushed into him. So Randy is now killed. So Hannah checks on him after his dead body and sees that he is indeed dead, and once again calls her ex, but then is pulled away from this hooded figure that we saw earlier, and rushes her back in, and Megan follows his command. So she says that she now believes this hooded man, and the hooded man reveals that he was the father from the beginning that tried to smother Hannah earlier in the movie. So the father explains how, even after doing that the corpse persisted after death and started killing people, and the only way to deal the final blow was by burning the body. So Megan and the father tried to do that exact thing, but the Hannah corpse rages on into a battle, and the father, in a attempt to fight it off, is then shoved into the fire himself, and Megan runs away from the situation as her ex arrives on the scene. So, he's calling for backup, and she goes upstairs a little bit. And she's like suffering through because of her anxiety, and Hannah is never too all that far away from her. So the ex picks up the phone that he had called her through, and then sees the dead body and calls for that backup. And Hannah proceeds to try to attack Megan. Meanwhile, the ex is looking around, and Megan, then in a weird, bizarre cut, ends up appearing in the one of those hatch boxes that corpses are shoved into. I don't know if they. I actually don't know what those are called. Those casks, I guess. So she's trapped inside, and the ex runs into the black cop, who has been pretty docile throughout the entire movie, but proceeds to start to follow the ex around. So Megan kicks her way open as the two of them arrive on the scene and see her, and then all three of them see Hannah on the wall. The cop tries to run to the door, but Hannah gets to him and then kills him, and starts to then proceed to try to control the ex by lifting him up and causing the same amount of pain. However, Megan begins to shoot Hannah over and over again until the body drops, and that works. So she forces the ex to get reinforcement as she alone drags the body into the furnace, and she is grabbed, but she manages to fight through it and push the body all the way into the furnace, and then she proceeds to wait at the outside area as police arrive on the scene, and it cuts to her trying to then get her life back onto normal as a little bug rests, and then she squashes it, kind of like almost a hint of, maybe she could be possessed, or maybe she fought it off, who knows. And that was the position of Hannah Grace. Through the entire movie, it was mostly just jump scares. I think the only moment that actually did catch my attention was that moment where our little hospital friend, it wasn't Dave, was it? Yeah, Dave. No, not Dave, Greg. Sorry. Yeah, the only moment that I felt had any emotional merit was when he was talking about the whole getting better scene. Other than that, it was your pretty generic jump scare affair, and that's what most of this movie was, unfortunately. I did enjoy that moment, and I wish there were moments more of that nature of, more of a balance between the jump scares and actual emotional, bonding of characters, because that's what really helps these types of movies not just be your pretty generic possession movies. And I do feel like because it sticks to pretty much every jump scare imaginable, from fake jump scares to the passing of a shadow to all that stuff, it kind of just comes off as just another generic horror movie that just doesn't do anything that really stands out except that one moment. So it was pretty lame. So I'd give it a 3 out of 10. Nothing crazy here. Nothing that great. And that's my review of The Possession of Hannah Grace. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out that link in the description. I'll head you over to my Patreon page, and any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, Bye bye.